idea of what are the types of communication. And these are again very, very simple. There are two types of communication that you always need to remember. The first is verbal communication and the next is non-verbal communication. Very, very simple. Verbal communication is the communication in which you use words. Verbal communication is the one in which you use words, and you use your words in two ways. That is, one, the way that I'm speaking to you, and the other in which I have written all of these words for you. So that means there are two ways of using words. One is in the oral way, the other is in the written way. So you can talk to your friend on the call, or you can talk to your friend using text messages. Both of them are going to be called verbal communication, the communication in which you use your words. Vis-a-vis non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication is the communication in which you do not use your words. We'll come to non-verbal in just a second. When we talk about verbal communication, we have two types of it, as I told you, that is oral and written. Oral is easy to understand, and I don't think that you will ever face a problem in understanding oral communication. When it comes to written communication, there are so many types of written communication that you people have already encountered in your life. You talk about texts, you talk about essays, you talk about articles, you talk about comprehensions, you talk about journals, anything, emails, right? So there are so many ways in which you can talk to someone in a written manner. You can write letters. So all of those things, one thing that is common to each one of them is the sense of a paragraph. So the smallest unit of a passage, smallest unit of the passage, the most important unit of the passage is a paragraph. Do you understand that? Now, a paragraph is a lot of sentences coming together, right? So when a lot of sentences come together to give you information about one idea, it is called a paragraph. Now, just go to any reading passage or an article that you can remember from any of the reads that you might have done in the past, right? So any of those particular passages, particular comprehensions would have a number of paragraphs. How is it that you decide that what is it should be there in one paragraph? The idea is that every paragraph should be talking about only one idea. Consider this. If there is an article on global warming, just a simple article, right? In that article, you already know that you're going to first start with the definition of global warming. You're first going to tell me what is it that you mean by global warming. In the next paragraph, you'd give me certain statistics, certain pieces of information, certain things that other institutions might have talked about. In third paragraph, you go ahead and give me an example. You can give me an example of what is the impact of global warming on India, right? So that can be the third paragraph. In the last paragraph, you give me some conclusion. This is what you generally have in terms of the structure of an article or of a comprehension. Within that, I told you there are 4 different paragraphs. So I'm talking about all of those things. So the first paragraph was only giving me a definition or a very primary piece of information about the topic that I am writing this article, that is global warming. It will not talk about anything else. The first paragraph will not talk about the impact of global warming on India. That is probably going to be covered in the third passage, because that is where the example is being quoted or a case study is being quoted, right? So this is very important. So when I'm talking about the first paragraph to introduce, that means all the sentences are only going to talk about global warming. They are going to give me more information about it. That is global warming. By global warming, this is what we mean. WHO says global warming is this. World Health Organization says this is what it is. Then UNESCO says that this is what it is. UN has also said this is what global warming means. So all of those are going to be the definitions for global warming that you can talk about. In the next paragraph, you can talk about certain statistics, right? So first thing that is, you're going to only talk about global warming in the first paragraph, and that is what is called paragraph unity. This is very important for you to remember because this is also asked of you in the examinations, objective type examinations that you might appear in. What is the meaning of paragraph unity? Paragraph unity means all the sentences within the same paragraph are only going to be talking about the one main idea about which the paragraph is. This is how simple that paragraph unity is. Unity in the sense of they are talking about just one idea that was introduced in the first line of the paragraph, the main idea about which the paragraph is. All the sentences only talk about that. Any other idea that you want to talk about will be included in the next paragraph. If you have more information, you have another idea, all of that should be produced to me in the next paragraph. In one paragraph, only one idea. That is what it is. The other is paragraph cohesiveness, which also means coherence. There are two words that can be asked of you in the examination. Also, you can understand it in these two words. That is paragraph cohesiveness or coherence. This means that paragraph produces all the pieces of information in a chronological manner, in the way that they need to be presented to me. Just the way that you see dates in a calendar. First, you're going to see January as a month, then you're going to see February as the month, then you're going to see March as the month. Similarly, in a paragraph, first you need to tell me what is it that you're talking about. Next, you need to give me some more information. Third, you need to give me an opinion if you are just talking about one topic within the paragraph. So the paragraph also has the same structure, just the way that you see in the passage. That means one topic that it is talking about, and then you have a structure in which all the sentences are given to me. For example, if a paragraph is starting with, therefore I say that Indian government has done a lot to arrest the effect of global warming. If my paragraph is starting with therefore, do you think that that's the best position for that sentence? I don't think so. So the sentence could have started with that the impact of global warming on Indian subcontinent is now visible in the effect on ABC, XYZ, all the other things. Then the last sentence can say, therefore, the Indian government has taken certain concrete steps to arrest the impact of global warming in India. So this can be the last sentence. This is what I mean by cohesiveness, correct position for correct sentences. So this is again very, very important for you to remember. And when it comes to written communication, paragraphs are the most important unit that you get questions asked on. With that, I'll go move back to the types of communication that we had. The other type of communication that we had is non-verbal communication. When we start talking about non-verbal communication, this communication is the most important communication that you get into with anyone. That is, non-verbal communication has about 70% of contribution in any communication that you make. Verbal communication, that is the words that you use, are only 30%. Non-verbal communication is 70% in any communication. For example, if you want to say that you like something, but you do not have that expression on your face, you say, I like something, vis-a-vis saying, I like that. So there are two different expressions that you're saying. One is, I like it, with a blank face. Nobody really feels that expression now, vis-a-vis saying that with a lot of excitement. Yeah, so that is what happens with non-verbal. Non-verbal communication can still communicate an idea even if you're not using your words. That means if you haven't talked to me and you are still required to communicate an idea of the sort that you're angry with me, say that you're angry with me, right? So if I go ahead and ask you, what are you going to have for dinner, and then you don't reply back, and then you don't answer anything, you continue with the work that you're doing, what is that? That means you're ignoring me. With that action, what I will understand is that probably you're angry with me. When I know that you're angry with me, I'm going to ask you, why is it that you're angry with me? And all of that happened when you did not even answer. So non-verbal communication can communicate the idea in the most clear way that you can ever talk about. The clearest way of communicating the idea to someone is with non-verbal communication. Another, if you're talking to me and saying that you like something and you're doing this, I like this. So then what do I know? You're lying to me. So either, even if you're using the right words of saying that you like this, but you're using a gross expression on your face, that tells me that you're lying. Hence, nonverbal communication speaks volumes about you. So this is the communication that you need to correct if you are unable to communicate in the world clearly, right? Nonverbal communication is the most important part. Even if you are not fluent in any of the languages that you want to speak in, whatever might be the idea, even if you fall short of words, but your nonverbal communication is correct, people will follow you, people will listen to you, right? In nonverbal communication, there are certain things. That is, one is the gesture. There are certain actions, there are certain things, there are certain ways of life that are considered to be good. That is, if you're using a gesture of winking at someone, right? So you do this. This is generally not considered a good gesture. When you whistle, it is not considered a good gesture. There is no physical deformity in it. There is nothing physically bad about that gesture, but in the society this is not considered to be a good gesture. So if you find somebody whistling, even if that person is the topper of your class, you're still going to say that, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable in talking to that person, that person is not well mannered, right? Just this small thing made you feel that that person probably is not well mannered, that person hasn't even talked to you, right? So gestures mean a lot. Next is body language. This is a major tool. If you want to win over people, body language speaks volumes. If I am sitting in front of you with a stoopy posture, if I'm sitting like this, if I'm talking to you in language which seems very robotic, if I'm sitting with you in front of the camera, not moving my head, not moving my shoulders, not moving my hands, and I'm just sitting like this and mumbling, then in that case, again, that is a body language which is of an underconfident person, incompetent person. That person has been given a script and that person is narrating that script. That seems unnatural. So body language speaks volumes. Again, something that you need to excel in order to become a good orator, in order to be followed by people, in order to be someone who can be accepted in any organization, in any situation, who can be seen as a leader. Body language plays a very important role. Next is posture. This gives away a lot of information about you. So when you see me sitting in an uncomfortable position, so when, if you see me sitting like this, right? So or I'm going like this, or I'm uncomfortable and I'm doing this back and forth. If I'm doing this back and forth, then you know that probably I'm not sitting in a in a very comfortable posture. The other is, if you're standing against the wall and you're leaning like this with your shoe resting on the wall, this is something that most of us do, and you're reading a chewing gum while the dean of your college enters the room. Imagine this situation, that this is the wall, you're leaning against the wall with your shoe resting on the wall, and you're reading a chewing gum, and the dean of your college moves into the room right at that instance. Even if you were the best student in the room, the dean might feel that you are not the best person. So then that becomes a problem of the posture in which you were standing. If you are going to be very lanky in your posture, people will not want to follow you. People will feel that you're lazy. People might feel that you're not serious. People might feel that you're incompetent. So all of those things get told to them, even if you might be using the best of words, people will not follow you. Next is tone of voice. Now this becomes essential. This is where you can draw a line between a person being polite vis-a-vis a person being impolite. So if you're thanking someone, just imagine this situation. So if you say thank you vis-a-vis saying thank you, both of these only have a difference of tone. The tones are so different that the first one is going to be considered as bossy, it is going to be considered as impolite vis-a-vis the next one, which is going to be considered as a polite one. So tone is a non-verbal cue which tells the other person, should that person be talking to you or not, are you a good communicator or not. Very important. important again. And the last are facial expressions that I've already talked to you about. If you make a grossed out expression, if you make a sad expression, if you make easy expression, all of those expressions are seen by people. Get it? So if I do this, then that means that I'm trying to read something intensely, or I'm looking away from you like this. That means that I'm ignoring you. If I'm doing this, right? So I'm moving my hand like this, then that means I'm trying to tell you to go away, which is again impolite. This is a gesture that is bad, and the facial expression is that of that I don't care about you. So everything can be talked in terms of the facial expressions. You can use your non-verbal communication to talk about anything that you can think of in this world, right? So this is what is the importance of non-verbal communication. Moving forward from this, there are different types of communication that you do in this world. So this part is going to produce that difference between the communication that is happening within this ecosystem that you exist in. The first sort of communication that you have is intrapersonal communication. Now, intrapersonal communication is the communication that you do with your own self. I told you that you were thinking about food, you were thinking about your friend, you were thinking about your school trip, you were thinking about how amazing your college is going to be while we are in this conversation. While you're attending this lecture, you're thinking about something else. You're thinking about your sick dog. All of that is intrapersonal. You haven't talked to me about it. You haven't voiced that to me, but you're still thinking about that. All of that is intrapersonal. When you're just talking to your own self, when you're thinking about it here in your mind, you don't have words coming out of your mouth, but you're thinking about it in your mind continuously. So intrapersonal communication can be a barrier in interpersonal communication. If I am talking to you right now, this is interpersonal communication in terms of one-to-one communication. I'm talking to you. That is one-to-one communication. At that point, if you're thinking about something else, then what am I going to say? He's lost. He's thinking about something else. She's thinking about some other place. She's not there in the class. All of those things are going to be barriers to your interpersonal communication. But if you're thinking of an answer in the examination hall, when you're doing mental mathematics, when you're trying to evaluate a situation, when you're saying to yourself, he's saying that he needs money, but the reason that he's giving is incorrect. He's lying to me. He's saying the truth. How amazing this person is. I should clap for him. I should help him. All of those things are the communication that happen in your mind. So that is intrapersonal. Next is interpersonal communication. I've already talked to you about this. Interpersonal communication is the communication that happens between two people whenever you are in a dialogue with someone, whenever you are going to be interviewed by someone. That is interpersonal communication. And this is where verbal and non-verbal communication plays a very important role. So if your verbal communication is good, but your non-verbal communication is not, you are never going to be accepted anywhere. You are not going to be the person that people want to talk to. If your intrapersonal communication is overarching over your interpersonal communication, that is, you're thinking too much and you are not able to communicate well, then again your interpersonal communication will not work, right? So interpersonal communication is the communication wherein everything becomes very, very visible because a person is talking to you face to face, one on one. Next is small group communication. This is something that you do whenever you are in a group discussion situation. This is again something that you get into if you have a birthday party back at your home, if you are having food with your friends at a restaurant, when you go out to watch a movie with your friends. Whenever you are among small group of people, this is what is a communication. This is generally used to have discussions and debates, right? So whenever you have discussions and debates, they happen in a small group communication. Next is one-to-group communication. I hope that you remember the last time you heard a chief minister, a leader, a prime minister talking to a lot of people. You can also remember the classroom setup, the assembly when your principal wanted to talk to each one of you, the school assembly, that was again one-to group communication. That is, there is one person who wants to convey a message to a lot of you. That is one-to group. In this also, the communication can be two-way. So if you want to ask me a question and I'm the one standing on the stage trying to narrate a story to you, then you can go ahead and create an interpersonal communication also while somebody is in a one-to group communication. So you can think of the stand-up comedians that you might have watched on YouTube. So if the stand-up comedian is talking to the group, that is one-to group communication. If there is somebody from the audience who raises his hand and starts asking him a question, that is when the one-to group communication changes to interpersonal communication. Now there, the comedian has started talking to you. So that is how it can happen. And the last is mass communication. Now, this is what I earn my bread out of. Whenever you watching news, whenever you see billboards, whenever you see advertising, whenever you see posters, pamphlets, brochures, all of those are mass communication. So you can take an example of the school notice board. So if you have a notice for the students of the ninth grade, the students who are studying in the ninth grade. So that notice is only for them, but it is there on the school notice board. So the students from grade 1st to grade 8th and the students from grade 10 to grade 12th are not going to get affected by that. But if there is a student who is from the ninth grade, he might have to read that notice and take the required action on whatever that the notice tells them to do. So this is what happens in advertisements also. So I can give you a very small example. You must have come across a brand called Diwan Sahib, right? So that is endorsed by Virat Kohli and Anushka Sharma. So if you have seen that brand, that's an ethnic wear brand, Diwan Sahib. So those people endorse their ethnic wear collection. How many of you would have walked into their store and bought that ethnic wear? I don't think a lot of you. So the communication happened. That is, they advertised for everyone, but only a few people took that action. So those few people, for those few people, the communication became effective. For the others, it was just communication. When you decide that do you need to buy a Colgate or you need to buy a Sensodyne, that is, it is going to be effective in either cases for only a few people. Some of you are going to buy a Colgate from the market, the others are going to buy a Sensodyne from the market. So you understand what is it mass communication is. That is, one brand is talking to everyone, and then there are going to be some people who are going to understand that communication, believe that communication, and go into that particular communication with that brand. Right? So these are what are the types of communication. When you people have communicated with someone, the next that you need to remember or understand here is that the communication can also lead to certain barriers, which will end up in the communication failing. The communication can lead to certain barriers being established or pre-existing barriers, which will stop the communication from happening. Now, these barriers, all of these can be simply understood from the instances, just the way that the previous part of the presentation was understood from the instances that you people might have encountered in your life. These are not difficult things, and you do not have to remember these. Just understand these. There is never going to be a question which is going to be asking you about listing these unless it is a subjective type question paper. So hardly is there an examination that ever asks you about the barriers in communication. But if there are one, I'm pretty sure that you will be able to solve that answer. So the first barrier that I have in front of you here is called the physical barrier. What do you mean by the physical barrier? Take an example of a situation wherein you want to meet Salman Khan. Just a small example, right? So you want to meet Salman Khan and his bodyguard, that is Shera, will not allow you in. That person will not allow you to go in without permission. That's a physical barrier. If you want to meet a friend of yours who is in Pune, And since we people are under lockdown, you cannot fly to Pune. So that's a physical barrier. You cannot go and meet your friend. If there is a CEO of a company and he sits behind a brick wall, then, and he does not even allow people to meet him that easily. So that's a physical barrier. You can see that barrier of the wall. So these are all physical barriers wherein you can see that barrier physically and know that you do not have an opportunity to meet, talk, or get the conversation happen, right? Next here we have is a perceptual barrier. Perceptual barrier, this is very, very important for you to understand, because this is something that most of us ail with. This is a barrier in which we people already have a preconceived notion about somebody or something. This is not from my experience. This is just my perception. So there could be a perception of a situation wherein I believe that mathematics is a very, very difficult subject. Mathematics is a very, very difficult subject. What do? I don't study it at all. I do not read it at all. That is a perceptual barrier. That means the communication is not happening with mathematics. Similarly, if you feel that you cannot make friends with a person who's rich, just consider an example of a situation wherein you come across somebody who's filthy rich, very rich. He's ostentatious. He likes to show his rich side. He likes to showcase the money that he has, and then you feel that will not he will not make friends with you, right? So that's just the simple belief that you have even before you've talked to that person. What is it that you're going to do? You're not going to talk to that person. Simple. The communication will not happen. Why? Because you perceived something about that person. What if that person is really welcoming? That person does not like to be pompous about his money, though he's rich, but he's very down to earth. You could have realized that if you would have gone ahead and talked to that person. Now let's talk about a flip side. If you want to talk to me and I am the topper of the school, I am the one who scores 100 every time in a subject. So you come to me asking me for my notes, and what do I say? Why should I give you my notes? You don't even score a 30 in the examination. You will not be able to understand it. Let it be. I'm not going to give you my notes. What is it that my perception was? One, I was egoistic about it. The other was, my perception was that this person who hasn't been able to score till date in an examination will not be able to understand my notes at all. This is my perception about this person, because of which again the communication did not happen. So this happens around us all the time. We create certain perceptions about people, about things, about subjects, and then the communication ceases to happen. What is the learning from here? We should not have preconceived notions about things. We shouldn't create perceptions about things which we haven't experienced in our life. We should always go ahead and at least try and communicate with someone or something that we want to get into a conversation with, and then you can probably get a positive answer or a negative answer depending on whatever the situation is. So the communication, I told you, can go bad because of either of the people. Now you tried communicating to the person, but that person is egoistic. That person had a negative thought about you, and hence the communication still did not happen. But at least you tried, so you are going to be a better person who others will want to talk to. So this is again very important. Next is an emotional barrier. Now this is again something that you people must have realized in your life so many times. One situation when you are angry with me, you are angry with me right now. I want to explain to you why is it that I was not able to make it to the party last night. You had a birthday party and I'm your best friend, but I was not able to come and meet you yesterday. I was not able to make it to your party. And now you're angry with me. You're that angry that you would not even listen to my explanation. Imagine, you're that angry that you will not even listen to my explanation. That is an emotional barrier. Because of the anger inside you, you did not listen to my explanation. Other can be that you're that happy about something. You are today very, very happy. You're elated. That means you are at loss of words. You must have realized this so many times in your life. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to tell this to you. I'm so happy today. This is the only thing that you end up saying. So that's an emotional barrier because of happiness. Other is sad. Your dog is sick today. Just imagine your dog is sick today. You're sad about your dog. And I am telling you what an amazing time that I had with my friends in Manali. So I gave you a call and I am telling you about the amazing time that I had in Manali with my friends. And you, on the other side, are feeling sad about your sick dog. Will you be able to understand whatever that I'm saying? I don't really think so, because you are in a situation of grief. You will not be able to enjoy or understand whatever is my feeling that I want to convey to you. That is again an emotional barrier. All of that is happening here. You're feeling something, and because of which you are unable to understand whatever that I'm trying to say to you. Next is a cultural barrier. Cultural barrier means that everybody in this world comes from an environment that they have been living in. What do I mean by that? This is something that is most visible in our country. So our country is culturally diverse. It's a diverse country. So people that are living in Jammu and Kashmir are widely different from the people living here in Delhi. They're different from the people living in Karnataka, different from the people living in West Bengal, and different from the people that are living there in Gujarat. So how is it that they're different? They're different in the way that they speak a little. They're different in the way that they wear their clothes. They're different in the education that they might take. They're different in the conduct that they have. They're different in the way that they get married to each other. All of those things are cultural because they are dependent on the environment in which that those people are. So if somebody likes to eat coastal food vis-a-vis somebody who likes to eat vegetarian food, vis-a-vis somebody who likes to cook their food in a different way, that is all going to be dependent on the environment that this person is coming from. So all of those are cultural barriers, and they're different from religious barriers. Religion is not the same as culture. Remember this. Religion is a piece of information or a trait, an action that is inherited by you over generations, right? So the previous generation was doing something and you went ahead and incorporated that in your life. That is religion. When it comes to culture, it is the product of your environment. So the way that you behave, the way that you believe, the way that you create your art, culture, music, all of that is the effect of culture. What is a cultural barrier? So the way that you understand celebration. So each one of us celebrates the season of harvest in a different way, right? So people in southern India celebrate it in a different way. People in northern India celebrate it in a different way. So all of those people who celebrate the same thing, the same festival, that is of the harvest of the crop, but they celebrate it in a different way. That is a cultural difference. A cultural barrier is going to be of the sort wherein you realize that this person is talking about one festival and you are talking about another festival, and you do not have an understanding about each other. When you know that this is what is the food or the dish that you're talking about, but it is prepared in a different way in Jammu and Kashmir vis-a-vis the method of preparation in Gujarat. Both of those places produce a curry, right? Just imagine if both the people cook curry in both of the different areas, but the way that the curry is prepared in Jammu and Kashmir, it is going to be different than the way that it is prepared in Gujarat. So this is what is a cultural difference. Hence, there can be a cultural barrier. So if I told you that I want to eat curry and I'm from Gujarat, you are going to serve me a curry that you have prepared according to your way of preparation. So I can say that I don't like it at all. Why? Because this hasn't been prepared to my taste. Now, I hope that you can understand. So when you go to a restaurant and you say, this is not as tasty as the one that mom makes back at home. This is not as tasty as the other restaurant. This is not North Indian food. This has a different taste. This is not as spicy. All of those things are cultural barriers. That means you have a way of life, somebody else has a different way of life. Cultural barriers. The next that I have here is language barrier. This is very simple. If you don't understand my language and I don't understand your language, that is as simple as that. Cultural barriers. So if I'm talking to you in English, you don't understand English. You are talking to me in Hindi, I don't understand Hindi. Those are language barriers. So each one of us will have to come on a neutral platform in order to be able to talk to each other. That is, I will have to learn a little bit Hindi, you will have to learn a little bit of English so that we people can communicate between each other. The next that I have here is a gender barrier. This is something that we see in the contemporary world. So if you only want to talk about the rights of women and you are absolutely you're obviating the possibility of certain rights that men can have, then there is going to be a section of population that might not want to talk to you. Similarly, if you only want to talk about the rights and the powers that men have in the society and you are obviating the existence and the contribution that women make to your daily life, then in that case again you are going to be a person that a lot of people do not want to talk about. Then if I was to say that the girls in the group are going to be the best communicators, guys don't know how to communicate, what are you going to think that I am a biased person? If again I am going to talk about a fact that guys know how to write emails the best and girls don't know how to write an email, then what are the girls going to think? That he doesn't know it right, he's biased, and again there is going to be a gender barrier. You will not be able to talk to me, or you will not see me as the best individual. And the last that I have for you is an interpersonal barrier. Interpersonal barrier means that either you do not know what are the words that you need to use to communicate to me, or you are flowing in the non-verbal communication, you are using wrong expressions, you are you're not using any expression at all, you're not giving me the right cues. Again, the thank you idea that I shared with you. So if you're saying thank you instead of thank you, the interpersonal communication is not going to be correct. Or if you want to ask a question from me and you do not know what is the difference between what and who, you do not know the difference between what and who, then again this is going to be a interpersonal barrier. So you need to know the words and you need to know the way in which you need to communicate it. Unless you're doing that, it will all be an interpersonal barrier. When I told you about verbal communication and non-verbal communication, all the points that I shared with you there are the barriers in interpersonal communication. You need to do away with them. The last thing that I want you to remember the last thing that I want you to remember is how is it that you can do away with the barriers that you face in your communication. And these are the tools that you can use to do away with the barriers. Why is it important to do away with the barriers? Simple, to get the communication happen. If the communication will not happen, obviously my goals will not be met. So the first thing that is important for me to be able to communicate is to be brief. That is, I am going to stay topical. I'm going to stay relevant. Imagine a session in which, if the session is about management and communication, and I start talking to you about tenses and verbs and articles and probably a literature book, then a story book, all of that will not be topical. Will you feel that all of this is relevant for you? I don't really think so. And then you will lose the conversation, you will lose the link of the conversation, and you will never get into a conversation with me. And hence, this is what will happen if you're not brief. That means prioritize your pieces of information. Even if I have 20 different things to talk to you about, today, if this is what is the important thing, I'm going to talk to you about this important thing. Next important thing is mannerisms. This is very essential. If you are not mannersome in front of the other person will not talk to you. The communication will cease to happen. If again, the thank you case, if you do not thank people, then that's bad manners. If you use wrong gestures, that's bad manners. If you do not know how to use your words correctly, if you don't know how to express your emotions correct, all of those are mannerisms, and you will not be considered the best person if you do not follow proper manners. Right? So this is very, very important. Next is rationing the use of I. rationing the use of I. This is also something that is called the rational use of I. What do you mean by this? I am going to use I only in certain situations wherein it is required to be used. This is a problem that most of us face. When I say that I don't understand this, I don't need this, I am the best person in the room, I am the only one who can solve the problem, I am the captain of the team, I am the only one who contributes in the team, I am the state captain, I am the national captain, I. The problem of the word I. This, what it makes the other person feel is that those people are not relevant. So you should always involve other people in your conversation as well. Your conversation should be about everyone. Use you in the conversation, use we in the conversation, use I to the minimum, only in places where you need to talk about yourself and it is required. Don't love yourself too much so that the others stop loving you, right? So that is what is the idea of the use of I. This is again a very, very important thing to remember whenever you are in a conversation with someone. Next is be positive. I'm sure that none of you want to talk to a friend of yours who's always saying that we are going to die, we are never going to survive this coronavirus situation, the world is going to end, it is an epidemic, everybody is going to end in this epidemic, right? All of those negative thoughts, you are not going to be that person who is going to talk to this negative person. Never is that situation. So stay positive. Always provide a solution to someone rather than producing problems all the time. So this is one important measure. The other is a good listener. If, for example, again, coming back to the question that somebody asked me, if I start talking to you about journalism and the ethics of it, and you people are not required to study that, what is it that that would become? That I am talking about something that I know, but that is not of use to you. I'm conducting this lecture on management and communication because I was told that this is relevant for you from the examination point of view. What did I do? I heard you first. Next, when you people ask me questions in the chat, I try and answer them right there, right then. If I'm not doing that, again, I will not be able to ensure that this communication is happening properly. So it is very important for you to listen to your receiver first. Understand what is it that this person wants. If you're unable to understand it, you will never be able to cater to your client. You will never be able to cater to your friend. You will never be able to cater to anyone. You will never be a good communicator and people will not want to talk to you. The next is clarity in your message. Clarity in your message. Unless you know what is it that you want out of the other person, you will never be able to get that done. So the first thing that you need to know here is what is it that you want. If you want somebody to buy something, just tell them that you want to buy something. Don't beat around the bush. If you want help from your friend, then tell your friend that you want him to help you. So be clear in your message. Don't beat around the bush. If you're beating around the bush, then the other person will end up saying, what do you want? I'm unable to understand it, right? And then the communication again might break or is going to be inconsistent. The consequence of the communication is not going to be what you needed. So be clear in your ask. And the last is pronunciation. This is again one of the reasons that a lot of people are unable to communicate their idea to the other person. They know the right words, they have the right mannerisms, they also don't use a lot of I, they are very positive, they're good listeners, they're answering a question that the other person has asked them. This is also there. They have their message very clear. They know what is it that the priority is. They know what is the message that they want to convey. But the pronunciation is incorrect. The pronunciation is incorrect. Hence, this is again something that each one of you needs to take care of, as long as you want to be the person who gets to talk to everyone in the room. If you want to be the person who is liked by everyone, gets to solve everybody's problem, is the only person that people will go to if they are in a situation of situation or a problematic situation, then you ought to be somebody who can pronounce the words correct and can be clear in his or her idea, right? So these are the tools that you're required to take into consideration every time you want your communication to be effective. These are the things that make your communication effective. These are also called ethics. These are also called ethics. If you follow these ethics clearly, your communication will be effective 100% of the times.